So, good morning. Welcome to everybody. So we're going to start with by talking about product thinking, which is not always the main topic at Kubernetes conference, but it's coming. I'm going to start with a small anecdote. Of a few years ago, I was working in consulting, and I was involved in large performance review. So at that company, we had performance review for different kind of people. So and some were developers, some were working with operations, and there's basically a big round to look at who did the best job, who will get a promotion, and so on. And so the developers could very easily show we've done that piece of software and it worked great and it's fantastic and we have happy users. And then for the operations people, it was more difficult. It was more nothing broke. It's all okay. And then I was starting to think, how can we actually show the work of operations people that that it becomes more visible and it gets more valued inside the company. So my name is Stéphane Cesare. I'm an engineer working on platform experience at the German bank DKB.
And I'm Dominik. Hi there. I work as a platform product manager for GiantSwan.
And so we are going to talk about what's the point of thinking about product engineering for engineers. And then we're going to look a bit deeper into some of the topics. So looking at problems before solutions, some talk about some introduction also about what metrics are useful in these cases. And then looking at how you can bring product thinking to your role, that product thinking is not something that's only for product managers or product owners, but also for everybody. So in the beginning, it's important to remember that when in the beginning of ITs, like in the 80s, 90s, it was more of a purchasing cost center. It was basically someone needed a printer, someone needed a computer, and someone needed to buy a word processor. There was not a lot of internal value inside with the people in IT were not creating very much on their own. So it was basically if you looked at the value, it's basically who can get the best printer as cheap as possible. And now we are in a world where IT is much more central to providing value, but still we see that IT is very often considered as a cost center, that many companies are still looking at how can we make IT as cheap as possible and don't always look at what is the value provided by IT. And so that's one reason why the importance of product thinking. And as engineers, so we didn't have usually a lot of training about value, so we are more trained on the solution. We see things like that. So that this is a fantastic tool. You can control your Kubernetes cluster directly from Google Docs. I think every engineer will say, "Wow, this is really cool." The user value is not always very obvious. I would even say that if you find some user to find who see some user value in this, maybe it's time to run away. I can imagine some. And so it's for us, it's important to look at not only is the solution nice, are we providing a good solution to the problem, but also what is the value? So are we fixing the right problem that really is going to improve something for the people using it? And so it's also important in product thinking to look at the outcome rather than the output. So you have this nice diagram here. So this is a classic from project and product managers who usually have a lot of metrics. And And very often it's output metrics. How many tickets, how many hours do you stay at the office physically? Very popular metric at the moment. And then you have reports and they look green on the outside, but on the inside, the customer is still not happy. So this is one important topic to look at. And we need to look at also creating visibility. So when we do work, it has to be clear for people around us that it's bringing some value. And topics like operations, like coordination, they are usually topics that are where it's more difficult to be visible. And so in a nutshell, so when we talk about product thinking, what does it mean? It means to focus on the user value, to look at problems, what are the problems of the users before jumping into the solution. So, and for this you need to think on what is really the issue that the user have before you fix something. Look at outcome before output, and also think about product before project. So project means something that's finite in time, it has an end time. Product means you also think about the life cycle. So that's what's really important, and it's very often a problem for us. Not only build something, but also look at what happens when it's being built, who will maintain it. Is it something you're going to maintain? Is it something someone else is going to maintain? It's important to think about that. And here, so there will be, I guess the slides will be shared afterwards. So there are some good books about the topic. I would say as transform is good to start if you're coming more from the high level, more management. Escaping the build trap is very good if you're more on the engineer or developer side. So, and then when we talk about user value, so there are two words. We need to be clear who the user is and what the value is. So looking at platform engineering, very often most people will say the goal of platform engineering is to increase the value for the developers. So they are basically the first category, the builders. But it's actually just part of the users of the platform. So there are also the internal developers, so people who are building the platform, they are also their own users. People who are enablers, who are helping someone like professional services, who are helping someone coming into the platform. And also people who are only viewing, so regulatory viewers, people like controlling and finance, they also get a lot of value from the platform. And these are people who are, it's important to think about what their goals are, because for regulation, a platform can bring a lot of value. Also for controlling finance, it's never a bad idea to have a happy finance team anyway. And the value part of user value, so what everybody thinks about is more efficiency. We make the developers more effective. But the second part is also, and this is where operations is very important, it's also about avoiding risk. So it's not only about providing something more value, but also preventing that you lose value. And this is something that's important to think about and think how you can express it. And now, so going to pass to Dominik.
Yeah, now let's move on to problems before solutions. And I guess the first thing everybody's asking themselves now, who actually is thinking about problems before solutions? Especially as engineers and myself as a product manager also, we're very solution oriented. And so it's not just a question of how many teams are actually doing, like how many individuals are actually doing it. Just ask my wife. Whenever she talks about problems, I directly straight try to solve everything that she's talking about, while I should just listen and understand the problem that she's actually talking about. But solving the issues is so much more fun, right? But if you want to do really good product thinking, you need to do two things first before you really dive into solutions. And it's first find the problem that has the most value, that is the most important problem to solve. Because not always the first problem you encounter is also the problem that is most important, right? And you can waste a lot of time delivering solutions and solving a problem that is not most important, or you can dive into a very unnecessary discussion with your spouse because you tried to solve the wrong problem, right? So if you have the right problem to solve, you need to still deeply understand that problem, because you can also waste a lot of time trying to solve a problem in the wrong way because you didn't really understand every aspect of the problem properly, right? So that's the most important thing. Really define, find the problem that is most important, and then define that problem really well. What helps you with that is this double diamond model, which I also try to use often with my team as well. It's pretty common, and it splits the whole process into two spaces. There is the problem space and then the solution space. Most organizations have the solution space like pretty well covered. It's the whole agile process, life cycles, and all that. We also have a talk here later about the lean startup, which is also very good for that whole ideation and test in the solution space. But a lot of organizations are still struggling with really getting some time into the problem space, really exploring and defining problems. What does that actually mean? We'll come to that in a second. But it's really hard, and I want to showcase that by a quick story time with some anecdote from my life, because yay. And you know, it's a thing that when I took over my own team that I currently manage as a product manager, it's an observability team. Back then it was monitoring. If you want to know more about that, I have a talk later. But in general, the big talk, like everybody was just talking about Mimir. Back then we had Prometheus in place, right? This monitoring tool, that's the de facto standard. But we had some issues with Prometheus, and we wanted to switch over and migrate to Mimir. Mimir is basically Prometheus on steroids. But the problem is Prometheus and Mimir both have the same interface. You both explore data via PromQL. So for customers, really nothing actually changed. And we couldn't really sell that we are working 3 to 6 months on a product and then have nothing to show for our customers. And that was quite a problem, right? So how could we solve that, right? We could solve that in just exploring the problem space a bit further and going a step back and then just seeing, you know, all right, so what's the actual problem space? How does that look? The goal of exploring the problem space is to really deeply understand your customer and the processes of your customers and their needs and their pain points, like really be the psychologist for your customer. But also understand your own business goals, because it's important that your business also makes money, because delivering value without earning money is called open source, and not every company really wants to do that, right? So really understand how your business is making money, what's their key aims, and then try to get that together. There's many different methods and techniques how you can do that. The easiest one is basically talking to people, or better even, listening to people. So interview people, ask them, what's their process, what's their whole thing, right? What's their problems? And I bet with you, most people really like to talk about their daily work and what problems they face. So that's an easy one. And the second one, for example, is shadowing, but we'll talk about that a bit later. So coming back to Mimir. Now, if we would have taken the step back and explored our problem space first, we would have found out that in our case, we had really high monitoring costs. There was a really big overhead because of how Prometheus scaled in our example. And we didn't have a lot of data, but very high monitoring cost. And maybe also because of that, but also because we were missing documentation and there was not a nice onboarding process. We also had low internal adoption rate of our platform. So that were our key problems. It was not Mimir, it was really, high monitoring cost and low adoption of our product. All right, we have the problem, nice. Now what do we do with it, right? As I said, second step, you really need to understand the problem and the problem space in general. You need to learn as much about it as possible. And that's with defining the problem space a bit more. You can do that to identify different opportunities, which is like, opportunities where you can deliver more value, where you can solve some of these issues. You can prioritize those problems, which one is the most important, which one is the most, the first one you should work on. And then you gather as much data and insights about it as you need to really solve the problem in the right way. And there's lots of techniques about that. Jobs to be done, RISE, which is fun because it's math for product people, like it's a scoring board, like a scoring system, or opportunity solution trees, which comes from Teresa Torres' fantastic book. And there's yet another book recommendation, and that's a really good workbook and when you want to get started with a bit more discovery. So back to Mimir, if we would have understood the problem a bit more, that's pretty easy, right? It's like high cost is our biggest issue. What's the opportunity to solve it? Low cost, yay. But really, that was the thing, right? Stepping away from Mimir and just thinking about what's the biggest issue that we need to solve is our cost. And then we transformed our goal to an outcome, right? Outcome before outputs, and said we want to reduce our monitoring cost. We then went into like a little workshop thingy and tried to explore different ways on how we can solve that. And then there was a migration, potentially a migration to Mimir, but also potentially to SaaS tools or whatever, auto-scaling, adaptive telemetry is some fancy stuff. And the decision at the end was that we actually want to migrate to Mimir. That would be the best solution. I think it's a very good example that shows that you don't need to throw over everything your engineering team is doing just because you start doing product thinking, right? Your engineering team can have the right hunch. You can have the right hunch to solve a problem. You just might not know what problem you're actually solving. So taking that step back and really focusing on the problem space first will definitely help you sell your value to your customers and your stakeholders. Because before that, we couldn't really tell everybody why we were putting 6 months of work into that migration. Now we could just tell everybody, we are reducing our monitoring costs significantly by reducing the overhead and going to the more central solution with Mimir. So that was really helpful to get the buy-in of the rest of the organization, and it also gave us a scope of when is that migration actually done, because before that it was like, when we think it's done. And coming back to the whole journey that we just did, right, the initial problem with the high monitoring cost, the different ways on how we can solve it, the opportunities like reducing monitoring cost or increasing the value of the data that we have so that the cost per data value is less, and then going for solutions, that's already an opportunity solution tree. So in that short amount of time, we actually explored the problem space, we defined the problem a bit more, and with that, we are actually product discovery experts, everybody. Good job. But now, if we did all that, we have the solution, we have the product problem identified, how do we know that we are right? Right? And for that, we come back to Stéphane, and he will talk us through product metrics.
So I'm going to give a small introduction about metrics. And it's product metrics, because there are metrics is quite broad. And why it's important to look at metrics is because if you are in a relatively large company, some people will think about what is the value of what your team is doing, and this is a discussion you want to be involved with. Because if someone else decided very far away how to measure the value of your team, they maybe will look at a book on how to look at the value of engineers, and you will get some engineering KPIs. Something like I was saying before, number of lines of code per minute or something like that. And this is, it's better to get involved because you can come to more useful ways to measure your work. And this is about measuring what the outcome is and what the outcome is for the platform engineering team. Looking at what each person is doing personally is not very useful at the company level. So you have to think about what is actually the outcome your team needs to reach, and this is where it's important to think about what is the vision of your platform, what is the strategy, so what are the steps you want to take, and this is what will influence which metrics you choose. And this book is quite good. So platform engineering from Camille Fournier. There is a very good chapter on metrics as well. Can't mention. There's Max wrote a similar book as well. And so one example I will take. So there are various frameworks to look at this. One is the DevX framework. So DevX framework is about measuring the efficiencies for developers. So developers are one of your users. So fixing the problems that the developers have is always a good start. And when the DevX framework, they basically say that there are three things that are important for a developer to be effective. One is to be in flow, so to be focused on their work and not being interrupted the whole time. The second one is to have feedback loops, so to be able, when a developer builds something, that you can see the result quickly, and you don't have to go through weeks of meetings and change advisory boards and things like that before you can see the result. Because when you can see the result quickly, then you can react more quickly and fix issues more quickly without needing to do tons of design in the beginning. And then you need to lower the cognitive load. So cognitive load is basically how much skill do you need to have to be able to build the product. So of course, developers are skilled at programming and developing. But for us, so for example, we're a bank, so to develop software in a bank, you need to know regulatory stuff, you need to know some finance rules and so on, and this is not very interesting for developers. So this is something you want to try to abstract away. The developers will be less effective if they have to think too much about that. Also topics like operations, like security and so on. So developers have to think about it, but it shouldn't be 90% of their work. And then the point is to find what are the best metrics for currently what your users' pain points are. So this is what Dominik was saying before. You need to look at the problem space. What are currently the problems you're having, and look at what you can fix best. And with the DevX framework, so then there are some possibilities or topics to look at for how to improve feedback loops, cognitive load, and flow state. So this, once again, so the slides will be available. So this is just a starting point. And another one that I found really interesting. So this is very new. This I saw that for the first time a week ago. This is from Syntaso. It's called the Internal Platform Scorecard, and they are looking at 4 topics. So this is really focused on a cloud platform, and he's saying that what you want in a cloud platform is speed, safety, efficiency, and scalability. And there are some proposed metrics which I find are maybe not super easy to measure, but at least it's a very good way to express also to people outside your team what is it your platform wants to fix. Why is it making the company better? So things like being sure that as many services as possible follow policy, so that the developers don't have to think on their own about what are all the policy rules, but they know that if they use your platform, they will cover a lot of the internal policies already. And there are the frameworks. DORA, Space, DX Core, they come a lot from the same people. So the Nicole Forsgren is someone important. There was before there was a mention of Cloud Native Austria. There was one of the speakers was Laura Taco. I think she's the one who brought at least DX Core. So she's a good person to talk about for that. And Octopus Deploy, who is a British CI/CD as a service company, they wrote a very good summary of the different metrics and what works best in which situation. And also, so product thinking is important also for yourself personally, and you can use the same approach to look at what are the goals you want to reach, how can you make your company or your team better, looking at what outcomes you want to reach. And this is also a very good way to set goals with your management, to try to look at not only something that's just about how much work are you doing, but also what you want to achieve in terms of user value for the next month, next year. And now I pass on.
Yeah, and I already hear you thinking, but Stéphane and Dominik, I'm a cloud native engineer. What not a product manager. What can I do with all of that information? And for that, let's go one step back and to shortly close this up, right? 2 years ago, I was on a conference called the Product Owner Days, like really nice little conference in Cologne. And there was one talk that really stuck to me. It was guerrilla product management. And the whole idea was around that you don't need a product organization. You don't even need a product manager to do product thinking. It's a superpower that all of us can just start with tomorrow. And how can you do that? Like there's, again, different methods. One of my favorite is shadowing. And usually I don't hide when I'm doing it. But it's like looking over the shoulder of your fellow colleagues, of your customers and users, and just seeing how they solve the problem that you identified. Because I bet with you, your engineers will always have some weird shell script that goes, that solves some workaround somewhere. And finding that shell script and understanding what it does is really important to see how you need to solve the problem. Another one is asking why. Very easy one.
If I can interrupt you about the shadowing, I think what's really important as an engineer is you're not coming as shadowing to fix someone's problems. You're looking and listening, and trying to put to take the place of the person who's working, to look at what are the issues they're meeting. It's not about fixing their issues right now.
Yeah, it's like with my spouse, right? Listening, not solving. The other one is asking why. Also, what helps with your spouse? Just ask why whenever somebody says we need to do X, and ask why, and then they say because, and then you ask why. And with that, like there's the framework of the 5 whys, or be the toddler in the room. That really, helps to identify issues. Very boring. Read the business reports of your company, join the Jurfix or Town Hall, whatever it's called, to understand what drives your business, what their motivation is, right, to make money. And a very important one for you as engineers, implement instrumentation. I bet with you, if you do that, all of the metrics that Stéphane talked about, or some of them, add them to a dashboard, monitor them, your management will absolutely love you for it. And with that, wrapping up, product thinking for cloud-native engineers in a nutshell basically means focus on user value, think problems before solutions, choose outcomes over outputs, consider the whole product lifecycle, not just project scopes, explore and define the problem space to maximize user and business value, listen, don't judge, and measure product metrics to show results. Doing all this, and then you can use product thinking to earn the big bucks, not just for your organization, but also for yourself. And with that, thank you. Check us out on LinkedIn. If you have any question, reach out to us. We're here the whole 2 days, right? So just, jump us on the floors. And thank you.